The first thing to do before even discussing about defining strategy, framework of strategy, and the different strategies and strategic cases is to understand the context in which a strategy is defined. And it's a bit a long process, but we will spend 10-15 minutes on this to understand which are the key points on the strategic setting of the company. So the first key point is that strategy is about taking into consideration two things: industry attractiveness and competitive positioning. Both things are always at work when we think about and when we discuss about strategy. The industry attractiveness is the way in which the forces that Porter described, the forces in the industry and outside the industry, uh, bargaining power supplier and buyers and new entrants or substitute products are working all together. So an industry is attractive based on which is the structure, the situation of those forces. This does not mean that if an industry is not attractive, you should not enter in that industry or you should exit that industry. That's not the kind of decision that industry attractiveness analysis are inducing. The idea is that you have to understand how these forces are working and how much your industry is attractive in order to compete in that context. So it's a better awareness of an industry gives you the idea and the information to how to compete in an industry given the level of attractiveness and given the forces that produce that attractiveness or not attractiveness. And the second point is competitive positioning. The competitive positioning is how much a company is different in terms of profit from its competitors. So the competitive position is more inherent of the way in which the company position itself vis-a-vis the competition. A consequence of these 2 points is that the structure of the industry is not exogenous. It's not something that the company has to take face value, but the fact that the company is competing within that industry is creating an interaction, and at the end this interaction creates an evolution of the industry as well. So companies, even not big companies within an industry, can modify or influence the industry attractiveness. The root cause of the competitive advantage is the firm activities. So here you see that you have drivers that determine some activities and some value. This is within the company, and you can, through these activities, sustain a competitive advantage that can be better in terms of value creation for customer or worse vis-a-vis two things. The first one is your position relative in terms of other competitors who are producing and providing to customer the same product or service or similar product or service, and the industry forces. In this process, you are always working. Your positioning is influencing the industry, and the industry is influencing your position. So coming back to the chart we see before, attractiveness and positioning, industry attractiveness and company positioning are working together and are always changing, not reaching an equilibrium, but always through attention evolving the industry structure. Continuing on this chart that we are trying to use to define the context, let's focus on some points. The first point here is that you have to take a number of decisions in order to compete, and the starting point is your firm existing position, your activities and your value system in the moment in which you are defining a strategy. This is coming from the history and the initial conditions, the managerial choices, the situation of the company now. And so when you change these, you come back and you change the initial conditions. So there is a loop here within the company. The second point is here is how much our capabilities, our activities, our resources are different or are positioned vis-a-vis our competitors. So here we have our situation, if you want. Here we have our competitors, and we benchmark, we compete activities versus activities in creating value for a customer. And finally, you have to understand very well how the company compete within the industry, so the forces of the industry. If you have, in the Porter's term, sophisticated understanding of the industry, you can take better decision in terms of activity and value and better compete and act on the industry. So at the end, if you want to succeed, you have to take a good position, a desirable position that must be tailored on the specific company. This is the reason why strategy is a matter of management decision within a single company. That is company strategy. The only level and the only way in which strategy exists is business strategy, business level strategy. So you have a standard position, a beginning position, and you can reconfigure your value chain. You can change your competitive scope. You can change the dimension, also influencing the industry. But it's not a matter of doing this to compete, to, let's say, run a race. It's to find the best way that is positioning yourself within the industry and its forces. In this sense, attractive industry, how is set, how is built, how is structured the industry, so that you can have an attractive position giving the industry structure and giving your competitors. Your starting points are down here, and there too are initial management choices and initial condition. This is, let's say, the base. It's a longitudinal problem in terms of this is the base of all the decision you are moving from here up to your potential strategy for potential firm success. And so here you have 2 points. Point number 7 is initial condition. So when you define a strategy, you have some activities, you have a value system that it's already existing. So that's the result of the past decision and the result of the history of the company. So you are there, you have some economies of scale, you have a brand because of initial condition, because something happened before. And these initial conditions are not the founding condition, the moment in which a company is born. It's the moment in which you start to strategize. So every time you have a strategic cycle, you act to change your activities or your value system, you change the initial condition for the next strategizing cycle. Management choices are the choices that were taken before any strategy, outside any structured strategy. So in some moment of time, management decide under uncertainty to build some capability that end up to give you an economy of scale advantage, or maybe decide to work on a specific brand, creating a strong brand, giving you, in terms of activities, an advantage in terms of having a brand that is very, very well known. So the antecedent of this strategy, of defining the strategy, the initial condition and the management choices that are the starting point to do strategy has to do with entrepreneurial imprinting. And even Michael Porter, who is the founder of a positioning way of strategy, so a very structured way of planning for strategy, even Professor Porter is recognizing that some of the present situation come from creative acts that were at the beginning the initial strength of the company, of the founder. And so the example of Walmart, that decided to locate the small and medium-sized towns is supermarkets, and then you have to configure all the logistical system, all the moving of the people there, the diffusion, the broader usage of cars, take people, giving people the opportunity to drive to the supermarket and so on and so forth. So the initial decision was not a decision based on a strategic positioning decision, but was made out of entrepreneurial creativity. And going to have a look on an important analysis made by Gavetti and Rifkin, the entrepreneurial vision and the history are the founding part of the initial condition. They are imprinting the history and the competence of the company. And this is basically, in the Porter's view, the entrepreneurial insight somewhere in the industry. And here there is the way in which Gavetti and Rifkin describe it. So there is the word of cognition of the entrepreneurs, so personal values and representation of the word. With this in mind, the entrepreneurs is not making a strategic planning, a structured strategic positioning, is using heuristics to create activities, to interact with the word. So here is word of action, and having feedback. So his sensor is giving feedback, changing the representation of the word or the heuristic he is using. And in this way, entrepreneurs are creating the core of the organization of the founding company and imprinting these heuristics through all the history of the company, so that when you start a strategic planning cycle here, you have to take into consideration the fact that there are initial condition and pre-managerial choices that take the company where the company is today, but more than that, build the activities, the competence, the resources, the value system that the company has today. And starting from there, from these activities, you have to understand which is your possible competitive advantage. And then your competitive advantage is measured within this tension, which is your tailored, attractive position and which are the forces in the industry. And through this tension, passing through this tension, your competitive advantage take you to the firm success. So this is important because it's giving you an overview of which are all the steps of the theory and the frameworks that you usually study when you take a course on strategy.